York, this is Democracy Now!
The rest of the people here don't have the guts to talk about this in front of people in this state. That's shameful. That's not democracy. This is where democracy goes to die today.
Democrats in Michigan protest a controversial right-to-work bill that Republican Governor Rick Scott's expected to sign today. Thousands plan to protest in the Capitol. We'll go to Lansing for the latest. Then to Egypt, where hundreds of thousands continue to demonstrate.
We're standing on a newly built wall that's separating tens of thousands of protesters from the walls of the presidential compound just a few hundred yards away. There's tens of thousands of protesters that have gathered here that are calling now on the president, Mohamed Morsi, to leave. No longer is the call for him to reverse his decree. The Presidential Guard has been deployed. They've locked arms and are preventing people from going, and there are Presidential Guard tanks that have been deployed as well. People here are very determined, and the protest is vigorous.
Democracy Now!'s Sharif Abdel-Quddus reports from the streets of Cairo, then Syria.
The current situation in Syria is a stain on the world's conscience, and the international community has a moral duty to address it.
We'll speak with investigative reporter Charles Glass, recently back from Syria. His latest piece for the New York Review of Books, Aleppo, How Syria is Being Destroyed. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman, back in New York. It's great to be home. The banking giant HSBC has agreed to pay a reported $1.9 billion fine to avoid money laundering charges in the United States. A Senate report earlier this year found Mexican drug cartels and firms allegedly linked to terrorism obtained financial services from HSBC, which it said provided a, quote, gateway for terrorists to gain access to U.S. dollars in the U.S. financial system. Among other allegations, the bank reportedly supplied $1 billion to a firm whose founder had ties to al-Qaeda and shipped billions in cash from Mexico to the U.S., despite warnings the money was coming from drug cartels. Because of HSBC's status as one of the world's largest banks, state and federal officials reportedly agreed to seek the fine over concerns that criminal charges would have hurt the global financial system. The New York Times reports the HSBC settlement reinforces questions over whether, quote, certain financial institutions, having grown so large and so interconnected, are too big to indict. The HSBC settlement's expected to be formally unveiled today. Another British bank, Standard Chartered, meanwhile, has agreed to pay a $327 million fine to federal and New York prosecutors to settle allegations of hiding hundreds of billions of dollars in transactions linked to Iran, Sudan, and other U.S. blacklisted countries. Regulators say Standard Chartered flouted U.S. economic sanctions to hide tens of thousands of transactions over nearly a decade, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in fees. Standard Chartered paid a separate $340 million fine to New York banking authorities earlier this year. Michigan Republican Governor Rick Snyder's expected to sign a pair of anti-union bills today that would make his the 24th so-called right-to-work state in the country. The measures were pushed through in a surprise vote last week that sparked major protests at the state capitol in Lansing. During a visit to a Detroit-area auto plant on Monday, President Obama voiced his opposition to the Republican effort.
What you shouldn't be doing is trying to take away your rights to bargain for better wages and working conditions. We shouldn't be doing that. These so-called right-to-work laws, they don't have to do with economics. They have everything to do with politics. What they're really talking about is giving you the right to work for less money.
We'll have more from Michigan after headlines. Egypt's bracing for new protests today over President Mohamed Morsi's hotly contested effort to hold a referendum on a controversial draft constitution. Ahead of today's rallies, masked gunmen attacked opposition protesters camped out in Tahrir Square overnight, injuring more than a dozen. We'll have more from Egypt with a report from the streets of Cairo from Democracy Now!'s Sharif Abdel-Quddus after headlines. The Prime Minister of Mali's resigned in a televised address hours after he was arrested by soldiers who backed a military coup earlier this year. The prime minister became prime minister of an interim government in April following a coup the previous month. Prime Minister Diarra was accused of pursuing a personal agenda while Mali faces a crisis in the north after Islamist fighters claim vast tracts of territory. He backed sending a West African intervention force to oust the militants, a plan opposed by former coup leader Captain Amadou Sanabo, who is thought to have given the orders for Diarra's arrest. The death toll from last week's massive typhoon in the southern Philippines continues to grow by the day, now topping 715 people, with hundreds more missing. Typhoon Bopa was the most southerly typhoon ever recorded in the western Pacific and the strongest to hit the Philippines this year. More than 115,000 homes were destroyed and a number of communities completely wiped out. Leaders of the European Union accepted the Nobel Peace Prize in Norway Monday with a call for continued unity in the long aftermath of two previous world wars. In their joint acceptance address, President of the European Council, Herman Van Rompuy, stressed the need for European integration, while European Commission President José Manuel Barroso urged the continent's involvement in seeking global peace, including in Syria.
It will also be for the next generation to take this common adventure further. I hope they will seize this responsibility with pride.
As a community of nations that has overcome war and fought totalitarianism, we will always stand by those who are in pursuit of peace and human dignity. And let me say it from here today, the current situation in Syria is a stain on the world's conscience, and the international community has a moral duty to address it.
Norwegian peace organizations and opponents of the European Union protested the award, citing the 27-nation bloc's role in the global arms trade, austerity measures, and foreign wars. For our coverage of Monday's Nobel Peace Prize from Oslo, Norway, and the counter-protests, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. Colorado's enacted its new law allowing the recreational use of marijuana 1 month ahead of schedule. On Monday, Governor John Hickenlooper signed an executive order legalizing marijuana's recreational use following its approval by state voters in a ballot measure last month. Colorado follows Washington State, which enacted a similar law on Thursday. President Obama is under criticism for agreeing to accept corporate funding for his second-term inauguration next month. The New York Times reports donors have been offered a number of sponsorship options, including the top tier of $1 million for institutions and $250,000 for individuals. The plan differs from Obama's 2009 inauguration, when corporate lobbyists and political action committee donors were banned and individual contributions were capped at $50,000. It also follows the Democratic National Committee's move this summer to renege on a vow to stage its convention in Charlotte without corporate donors. Ironically, Obama's corporate-sponsored inauguration will take place on January 21st, the 2-year anniversary of the Citizens United ruling allowing unlimited outside spending on political campaigns. Criticizing the move, the transparency watchdog, the Sunlight Foundation, said, quote, Obama said unlimited donations sully our democracy, threaten public service, and weaken representation, and he has now chosen to embrace them, he said. Former International Monetary Fund chief Dominique Strauss-Kahn has reached an out-of-court settlement with a New York hotel maid who accused him of sexually assaulting her in May 2011. The claim by Nafissatou Diallo, an immigrant from Guinea, forced Strauss-Kahn to resign from the IMF and dashed his hopes of running for the presidency in his native France. After Monday's hearing confirming the settlement, Diallo thanked supporters along with her attorney.
I just want to say I thank everyone who supports me all over the world. I thank everybody. I thank God, and God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Ms. Diallo is a strong and courageous woman who never lost faith in our system of justice. With this resolution, she can now move on with her life, and we thank everyone for their support and prayers.
Thousands of people demonstrated outside the United Nations Monday to call for an end to Chinese rule in Tibet. The protest comes after dozens of Tibetans protesting Chinese control have set themselves on fire in recent weeks. The group of largely Tibetan demonstrators in New York accused China of increased brutality and repression. At least 92 Tibetans have set themselves on fire since 2009, 28 of them in November alone. Among the most recent was a 17-year-old girl who died after setting herself alight in a Tibetan region of China on Sunday evening. A new report from the U.S. intelligence community says Asia will become more powerful than both the United States and Europe combined by the year 2030. The National Intelligence Council predicts Asia will possess more overall power when population size and other factors are taken into account. The Council also predicts China will surpass the U.S. to become the world's largest economy within the next 20 years. Other projections include a looming global decline in food and water resources that could see nearly half the world's population living in areas hit by severe water stress. And details continue to emerge on the retail giant Walmart's ties to the Bangladeshi garment factory where 120 workers died in a fire last month. The New York Times has revealed that at least 2 subcontractors were using the Tazreen factory to make Walmart goods when the fire occurred. Walmart has claimed it cut ties to a loan company that had used the factory before the fire. But documents recovered in the fire's remains show the factory had billed one of the 2 Walmart subcontractors on November 24th, the very day of the fire. Previously recovered documents have shown 5 of the factory's 14 production lines were devoted to making Walmart apparel. 2 people involved in worker safety oversight in Bangladesh have also revealed that Walmart played a key role in blocking the improvement of electrical and fire safety at Bangladeshi factories during a 2011 meeting. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily independent global news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.